Rachael Buckland is the founder and director of Careershift, a company which guides people who've lost their job or need a new career to do just that. Rachael, thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate the opportunity.
And it's a big decision. It's a big time. It's a very stressful time for a lot of people. And I would imagine that from your experience, some have great difficulty in coping.
Typically, what we find is people are in an extreme overwhelm. That lack of clarity is never something that I forget. I just always try to put myself in their position. It's a really difficult time. I just really feel for everybody who goes through it, and we've just seen that happen very much in the government sector in Queensland as well. And the fallout's been massive, and people are still struggling. It's huge.
What's the first thing someone should do if they're told that they have no job anymore and they're at an age whereby it's very hard to retrain?
Well, I think what I would say, being a professional in transition, I would seek help. So sometimes turning to family is enough for a lot of people. However, sometimes it needs to be the right person outside of your family unit that isn't also freaking out and can provide some clarity to review your personal situation and get expert advice. And often it's not as bad as it seems. It can be for the right reason, and it's just a matter of anchoring into that and, looking back at your work history and having someone professionally review that to look at different opportunities that might actually make you happier. It's time to embrace it. That change is here. It's time to step forward, and it's hard to hear that when it's happening. I get that as well. But that's what I would do. I would seek advice outside of the family to just get that anchoring and to feel heard and directed and get some stability back.
Because a lot of people who have lost jobs that they've held for a long time, and maybe out of touch with how to apply for a job, how to find a job, what to do to get work.
Well, absolutely. We see that every day. People submitting resumes that employers really can't grab hold of the information they're reading. An employer will take 30 seconds to review a resume. So I would always say, have a professional write your resume so that you hit the yes pile for that interview. The other things that the services provide when you get help is that often your work history will equate to a mapping of your skills to a recognition of prior learning. So there might be some qualifications that you can use your work history to grab and to create opportunities in other areas.
How important is it a lot of people that lose their jobs in those situations have not lost their job because they can't do their job, it's because they don't have a job to do. How important is it for them to be mentally right before they start looking for new work?
Absolutely. It'll come out in an interview. It's about practice. It's about getting back to who you are, and definitely if counselling is required, it's time to tune into that and get some help. Definitely mental health is obviously a huge factor that weighs in with this kind of distress.
Is it hard to change your career midlife?
I am obviously in an industry that creates that every day, so my perspective is very different to someone who's standing in a position where they're facing that, but I don't think that career transition is as difficult as it seems. I think that the changing face of employment is overwhelming, and looking at it from a perspective of where you've been engaged in employment meaningfully for a long time and you're at that midlife point, I think the number one thing people need to remember is that employers love people who are in a stable position in their life that have meaningful work history, and that is a really competitive element in anybody's criteria. I actually think that people in the midlife of their career are more competitive than those starting out. So I am biased, but I would say no. No, well, I'm not the one in those shoes, I guess.
No, but I wouldn't say you're biased. I would say you're experienced. And a lot of people would be saying, I can't, I've done this for 25 years. That's all I know how to do.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily the case, is it?
No, I don't think so. I think that it's really difficult to stand back and look at your own skills. It's just too close. I think that if you can sit down with someone who can say, you really haven't acknowledged all of these other skills that you don't realise are part of the recipe of you doing your job successfully, and pulling those out. Suddenly people walk away feeling so much better about themselves. They feel like they've got something to offer, and that comes out in the interview. And that's what it's all about, is getting help, so that you can do that with a family member, but if you're not getting that, if you're not walking away from those discussions feeling lifted, then it's time to look for help.
You are the founder and director of Careershift, as we mentioned, which helps people who've lost their jobs. How did it come about? What forced you, or how did you start? Was this particular company formed based on the fact that you had lost your job and this is you had that experience? How did you come about doing this?
Well, I came about doing this from working in an environment that helps people with mental and physical disabilities in the occupational rehab sector. So I was looking at people who'd lost their job due to an injury. They'd been injured at work, and I was looking at the fact that that industry doesn't handle it as expertly as what I wanted it to be. So I created it and have worked with a number of those organisations, and they outsource their services to me. So I've come from a perspective of looking at people in crisis and saying, you know what, that is the crisis. Let's make it the absolute best because this is what you're worth. And from that, it's grown and grown and grown. So 14 years later, and there's still people in crisis, and we're still here to help.
Do people in this day and age need to be more flexible than they were, say, 20 years ago?
Absolutely. The job market is here in a changed condition, and people probably need to get on that page. At the moment, there's no job for life. There's even very limited 40-hour-a-week jobs where you can go to work 9 till 5. It's time to treat your career as a small business that you are the proprietor of, and to understand what you can contract your services to be and what your rate is, and to have your finger in a number of pies. And be on the lookout for opportunities and a point of difference.
And those opportunities may not necessarily be in the area you physically live. I mean, be prepared to move as well.
Yeah, relocation. Flexibility is what employers want. They will pay for flexibility and the right skill match. So that can create other pressures, but it is at this moment, it is time to look at, what's going to be the best thing for your overall picture, and that may be the whole family, and relocating is definitely something that could be considered.
Just in wrapping up, are you able to put into a time frame of, in your experience, how long it takes people to overcome the shock and the worry of losing their job before they find themselves back on their feet and capable of being positive and looking ahead? Is there an average time span?
Well, difficult to answer. I think that shock pretty much takes a 4-week period before you're back in your body and able to hear advice. Reacting can be an awful process. A highly reactive person in an immense amount of stress is clearly going to not create the right opportunities. I would give it 4 to 6 weeks to come back into a place where you can actually hear what's being said to you, and acknowledge that probably good ideas are being bounced off the surface purely because you're not in a place to listen.
Thanks very much for your time.
Pleasure, thank you.
Yeah, there's Rachael Buckland there, who's the founder and director of Careershift, which is a company which helps people find jobs and start new careers after the trauma of losing a job, and it seems to be happening more and more.